Hey guys, welcome to the percentages unit. This is just a little mini lesson on multiplying fractions. It's just a little refresher. You guys have been multiplying fractions for a long time, but we're going to talk about cross-canceling, which is kind of a new concept. Well, actually, I don't think it's new. I think you guys did this in 5th grade, but we're going to just do a little reminder lesson. So first of all, let's talk about parts of a fraction. So hopefully you remember that this is the numerator on top, and this is the denominator on the bottom. So remember that the denominator is what defines what units we're working in. So for example, when we have a denominator of 2, that means our whole has been split up into 2 or halves. If we were to have a denominator of 3, like let's say we've got a fraction like this, 2/3, and we have a denominator, we have a whole that has been split up into 3, and we're referring to 2 of those thirds, right? Up here, that 1/2, we were referring to 1/2. Okay, I think we all know our fractions. So when we multiply fractions, we're going to multiply numerators and denominators. So I'm going to go through 2 things here. First is a little language. When you see the word of in math means multiply. When I say what is 1/2 of 200, I bet you know the answer. You are just right now in your mind, you're probably saying, well, it's 100, Mrs. Jergens, that's so easy. And if I say what is a half of 10, you're going to say 5, right? So that doesn't automatically sound like multiplication, because usually when you multiply, you end up with a product that's a little bit bigger than the numbers that you multiplied. But since we're multiplying fractions, we're going to end up with a number that's a product that's smaller than one of the numbers. So let's see what this looks like. So if I ask you to find 1/2 of 200, let's set that up like a multiplication problem. That my of becomes a time symbol, and let's go ahead and make 200 an improper fraction there. So now I want to do 1/2 of 200. So I'm going to multiply my numerators. 1 times 200 equals 200, and I'm going to multiply into my denominators. 2 times 1 is 2. Oh, look at that. I have 200 over 2, which I know you can see as 100, but doesn't that look like a division problem right now? It really is. But if we simplify that, of course, we're going to get 100. Okay, let's do 1/2 of 10. All right, that of is going to become a multiplication sign, and let's change 10 to an improper fraction. Multiply our numerators, we get 10. Multiply our denominators, we get 2 times 1 is 2. And if we simplify that, we're going to get 5. Isn't that cool? Now let's multiply some fractions together. So let's set this up. 1/2 of, and make that a time sign, 1/2. Well, hopefully you guys already know what that is. Let's just model it really fast, because modeling is so much fun. Let's see what 1/2 looks like. Here's my 1/2, right? Here's my 1/2 over here. Well, I want to find out what half of that 1/2 is. So if I find out what half, let's split that 1/2 into half again. And now I want to know what 1/2 is. And actually I need to split the whole thing there. So I'm asking 1/2 of 1/2, and what do I get? Obviously, from my model right here, it's 1/4, right? Well, let's multiply it out and make sure. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. Yay! Look at that, 1/4. Okay, now let's find 1/2 of 1/4. Should we model this too, just because it's fun? So if I want to find 1/2 of 1/4, let's start off with 4/4. Here's my 1/4 right there. And now I want to find out what half of it is, right? So let's split all of my fourths up into half. And this is the portion that I'm looking at. I want 1/2 of that 1/4. And now it's obviously going to be 1/8, right? I just split this whole into eighths. I'm looking at one of them, so let's just make sure. So I've got 1/2 times 1/4 Multiply the numerators, I got 1. Multiply the denominators, I get 8. Yay, it worked. Awesome. Okay, well that's enough of that. You guys, I think, have multiplying fractions down. We're going to move on to something a little bit more fun. Cross-canceling. So cross-canceling is just, it's a procedural trick that we can use to save ourselves some time when we're multiplying and actually dividing fractions, but we're going to do it with multiplying fractions today. So cross-canceling helps us to simplify before we multiply. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute, but there's a rule with cross-canceling, and that is that you can only work with one numerator and one denominator at a time. So super, super important. Okay, so when we cross-cancel, we're going to look for a common factor between a numerator and a denominator, and we're going to simplify by that common factor. Let's look at the first problem that's on your page there. You've got 25/50ths times 10/5. Okay, well, I see a couple of things that I can do, but okay, let's look at this 25 up here. So we have 25/50ths and 10/5, and I can see that 25 and 5 are both divisible by 5, aren't they? So let's do that. Let's divide 5 by 5. 5 divided by 5 is going to be 1. Now I have to go over here and divide this 25 divided by 5 also. So 25 divided by 5 is 5, isn't it? Okay, I could multiply these out right now if I wanted to. Or I could do a little bit more cross-canceling and pick one more numerator and denominator to work with. So let's do that. I can see that 10 and 50 have a common factor, and it is 10. So let's divide both by 10. Now when I divide by 10, I really just need to cross off zeros. So 10 divided by 10 is 1. I just did that. 50 divided by 10 is 5. Okay, I could even do a little bit more here, but I'm going to go ahead and multiply this out. So 5 times 1 is 5. On the bottom I have 5 times 1, which is 5. And if I simplify that, 5 divided by 5 is 1. Okay, let's do another one. 24/60ths times 6/4. Right away I can see that 24 and 4 have a common factor, and it is 4. So let's simplify by dividing by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Now 6 and 60 also have a common factor, don't they? And it is 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. 60 divided by 6 is 10. Now here's where it gets fun. You guys, I can still cross-cancel because 6 and 10 have a common factor of 2, don't they? So let's divide each by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now I can't cross-cancel anymore because I don't have any more common factors between numerators and denominators. So let's multiply it. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 1 is 5. And that is completely simplified, so that's my answer. All right, let's do 2/5 times 15/16. Let's look for some common factors between numerators and denominators. Well, 2 and 16 have a common factor of 2, so let's divide both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And 5 and 15 have a common factor. It's 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Let's multiply it out. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 8 is 8. And I can't simplify that anymore, so that's my answer. All right, last one, and then you guys are going to do some problems on your own. 20/50ths times 100. All right, now let me just take a minute here and tell you what you cannot do when you are cross-canceling. You cannot cross-cancel numerators together, and you cannot cross-cancel denominators together. Here's what I mean by that. You cannot look at this 20 and this 100 and be like, oh, hey, yo, 20 and 100 have a common factor of 20. I'm going to divide both by 20. No, you can't do that. That is against the rules in cross-canceling land. So you have to work with a numerator and a denominator. You cannot work with numerators together, and you cannot work with denominators together. Okay, So let's do that. I can see that both 50 and 100 are divisible by 50. So I'm going to divide 50 by 50. That's 1. I'm going to divide 100 by 50, and that's 2. And looks to me like I'm done. So I'm going to multiply this out. 20 times 2 is 40. And 1 times 1 is 1. And my answer is 40. All right, if you're at home watching this, I don't have the worksheet problems on this PowerPoint. So you'll have to catch up at school, or hopefully somebody brought those home for you today. But at this point, if you don't have those, you can also print off a worksheet online. It's pretty easy to find, multiplying fractions worksheets with cross-canceling. But you can also just wait and get it from school. So that's all I have for you.